Hey, folks, thanks for joining me today. I got a really great show. It's with Matt Steady. He's a musician out of Leicester, England, the UK. Love talking to people over there. The only thing is that we have to deal with our time change differences. It's British summertime over there. So that gets a little bit tricky, but we hooked up and it's been fantastic. We had a really great talk. And speaking of summer, wow, just the hottest one I could ever remember. We just had July 4th not too long ago, and definitely I can believe it was the hottest day, maybe ever, at least for me. I don't know. It felt that way. Did my road race, which we do here in the ATL. Had a great time, probably the most humid road race that I was ever in. And hopefully I won't have to feel that way again, but slog through it and did all right. Did all right. It was a really great time. Then I heard like later on with that road race, I was already almost home, and they said that they had to end it early because there was some lightning within a 6 to 8 mile radius. There's kind of a thing there. If they get that, they detected on radar that there was lightning not that far away from the event that they have to call it off. The very first race I did was 8 years ago on July 4th, and it rained, and there was a little bit of lightning that day as well. They delayed that race by about 30 minutes because there was a crack of lightning not too far away. You don't want to mess with lightning. Trust me, I do not like it. You might think it's really pretty and everything, but I've had it strike pretty close to my area here, my home. And I'll tell you something, it's pretty scary. It could do a lot of damage, especially this beautiful electronic equipment, much less your home structure. It's terrible. And I've seen it, I've seen the results of it hitting houses and stuff like that. So you just never, ever, ever take lightning for granted. That is for sure. I've become kind of crazy about it. First time I actually saw it strike in the back of somebody's house, probably about 40 years ago or so. I saw that happen. I thought it actually hit the house, but it hit the lines behind the house, but the sparks flew up over the house. I called the fire department. They were a bit grateful. They couldn't do anything with the lines. It didn't cause a fire, but they had to sit there and wait for the electric company to come by to deal with those lines because they thought any spark could start a garage fire because the lines were on top of a garage. But anyway, that goes back to the early 80s. I don't want to give the old age away too much here, but feeling good, feeling good. And I felt really good about my July 4th race. And so, anyway, enough about that. Here is my talk with Matt Steady. He has a new release out, an amazing guitarist who is influenced by a whole bunch of different people there over in the UK, Great Britain, UK, England. So enjoy. It seemed like you were kind of busy there in the middle of a project.
Oh, always. I was just practicing a few licks on the guitar before while I was
Always
waiting.
creating, right?
I was listening to a radio show, and I kind of let your hands go while sometimes practicing works quite nicely when you're not actually concentrating. If that makes any sense. If it's
Got a
repetitive.
nice that's very good. So how is it going there in you're in the afternoon? This is British summertime for you?
Yep, 2 o'clock. I've got an hour before I go and pick the kids up. I'm
Nice. Yeah. Sounds
all
very,
yours.
very busy. Yeah.
Yep,
Very,
kids.
very
It's
good.
very, very hot here today. So
Wow.
yeah, just been for a walk to and the post office to post some parcels, and yeah, I'm proper sweltering.
Oh
Cheers.
gosh. Yeah, and the air conditioning isn't very big over there from what I hear.
No, you wouldn't use it very often.
Yeah, it gets quite costly, I'm sure. And then I'm sure with the energy bills
Yeah, no
throughout that.
kidding. But
Yeah.
we're in this kind of vast, rambling Victorian house, otherwise known as a money pit, to basically fit all the children in. But the walls are, a foot and a half thick. There's no cavity insulation or anything like that. So when it's cold, it's cold. But when it's hot outside, it's a little bit cooler inside. So a bit like a cathedral, living in a cathedral, really.
Yeah, pretty architecture over there. Here in the States, you have to really dig to go find a decent architecture.
Oh, there's a mix. Some
Yeah, yeah. Some things I just don't know what they were thinking. I'm in the Atlanta, Georgia area, and they tried getting very modern here back in the 70s, and that stuff didn't date very well.
there's a lot of 60s and 70s here that didn't date very well either, but there we
Yeah.
go.
So you got a great new release out. That's how I stumbled on you. How did that all come about? What was the inspiration for it?
To be honest, we've had quite a couple of years of it. We started fostering a couple of years ago. Well, we had done it quite a while, but we returned to it after doing some adoptions. Um, we've this year has just been crazy. Really, we've had some really happy, wonderful times, and some really sad times as well, and some really tough stuff to get through. And I just found that whereas on the last album lyrics just flowed, this time I had a lot in my heart I wanted to get out, but I didn't have any words to really express it. And I found that my guitar was doing the expressing for me. So in the end, I've ended up doing 10 kind of epic guitar instrumentals. And really, it's just a way of just letting everything that's in me come out musically. And so some of the songs are quite melancholic. Other ones are kind of triumphant and soaring, and there's one of them's even quite mischievous, really. But it's I think I call them songs even though they're instrumentals, but I think they're songs that people can listen to and connect to, and they'll you know there's that link with their emotions from my emotions when they're listening to it. And yeah, it seems to be quite a powerful album and seems to be catching people's imaginations from what they've heard of it so far. So that's great.
And what's the inspiration as far as like, do you just noodle around on the guitar? You have a tune that you're like, I haven't heard this before. How does that come to you?
Sometimes I mean, one song I was in the supermarket and I just had this idea for a melody, and then I had to sing it to myself all the way through the rest of the shopping and packing the car, and then driving home, unpacking the car, and then quickly went to the recorder and just got it out. So that was quite funny. Other ones, I get a nice set of chords together that give me a basis for something, and then I just improvise over the top of it, and it's surprising how often when you go back, quite a lot of it, there's some absolute golden moments in it, and some of it you just can't repeat either. There's other bits of it that you replace or you move about, but sometimes there's some absolute gems in there that if you were just sat down and writing with a pen and paper, you'd never come up with, just because your fingers do strange things sometimes. It's often the mistakes that you make that sound really cool and interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's best not to overthink anything and just
I definitely agree.
go with the
Yeah.
flow. Go with the flow.
I
Yeah.
mean, I had a classical background from an early age. I was brought up on violin and piano and music theory and all that, um, and which is an absolutely amazing kind of head start to have. But now I don't think about any of that. I just play. But I think if I didn't have that in my background, um, I wouldn't be able to just play. I would then need to think about the theory and what the chords are. And all. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
now I seem to have kind of gone a little bit faster. I'm not saying I'm a master at music theory, but I know enough that I can actually just pick up my instruments and just express myself without thinking, oh my goodness, do I need a seventh chord here? Or, it's so that's quite nice. It all kind of feels quite natural.
So growing up, when did they start you on, or your family start you on
Well, primary
piano?
school. So, I mean, we must be talking six or something, five maybe. Yeah.
You like
So I
those
did violin and
lessons?
piano all the
Yeah.
way up to 18, and then went to university. And obviously, I didn't take a piano with me, and I didn't take my violin either, and I didn't play really either of them for many a year. But I do play the violin quite a lot now, especially with. I find actually more people. There's a lot of guitarists around, really good guitarists, but actually finding a really good fiddler to play on your stuff isn't quite as easy. So I actually find I get more kind of session work with my violin than the guitar, interestingly enough, and that's great fun. So I did some today actually. I played for a lovely folk artist called John Reed,
Huh.
and he's just moved up to Scottish borders. So that was a real joy. Enjoyed that.
Yeah, so yeah, it's nice to add strings. I mean, I guess you go back to Beatles and people like that before that. Just strings add such a dimension to pop music that's introduced the rest of the world to that. It's nice to know and nice to have.
Absolutely. I mean, I quite often put strings in my songs. I quite often have. I have obviously I've got a couple of violins, and I've got an interesting violin which has got special strings that tune it down an entire octave, which not many people have heard that before. So it's kind of lower than a viola. Hasn't
Mm.
quite got that massive big tone because it's not quite as big an instrument, but it's very effective and very, very fun. And I do have a viola and a cello as well somewhere. So I do record all those and put them together. Often put some synths in the background as well. You can kind of, there's some very good string sounds together. And putting the two together makes it sound a little bit more orchestral rather than I've just recorded a string chord. So it sounds more like an orchestra than a string quartet if I do that, which is quite nice. But on some of the songs, I've got some lovely kind of string backgrounds, along with some really crunchy guitar sounds and the bass, and then some kind of soaring lead over the top. And I'm finding that the strings and the kind of um, crunchy, heavy guitars together are working really super well together.
Yeah, and
Good for
you got inspiration from a lot of different places, from what I've noticed. A little bit of progressive rock,
definitely.
Celtic. What kind of progressive rock did you enjoy following and growing up on?
I think the main progressive rock band that I've listened to really is Marillion. I remember going on a youth camp in the Lake District when I was in
Oh,
my must be 13 maybe. So I mean, my parents sent me and my brother along to this camp where we did canoeing and climbing and all that kind of stuff. And they obviously had a holiday at home and just relaxed and chilled without us. So
oh,
that was genius. But I remember kind of back at base they had a table tennis table and snooker table, and there was a stereo. And I remember the two tapes that were there. Someone had brought with them, and one was uh, Alana Miles, Blue Velvet.
nice.
And the other one was Marillion Clutching at Straws, and I just hadn't heard anything like it in my life. It was amazing, and I promptly went out and bought it when I got home on cassette, of course. And I've been pretty much listening to them ever since. They're a very different band now than they used to be, but they do some fantastic stuff. So there's definitely a bit of that in there for sure.
Yeah, your track "Deep Calls to Deep" is really haunting, and it kind of reminded me like of a Pink Floyd-ish kind of vibe to it. It's very deep and haunting. I really enjoyed that, and then the video, which has some really interesting imagery in that.
Yeah. It's I can't say that I kind of went to space and videoed it myself. You know, it's a lot of it is stock footage. You know, but with along with me recording on my camera, playing and putting it all together. So yeah, it's good fun. I think the video came out really well. The kind of space scenes kind of provides it a little bit of air of wonder when you're watching. And I do find that these days, if you want people to listen to a track, it's very difficult. People don't have 5 minutes
Mm.
um, to listen to a track, it seems. And a lot of that is because we do quite a lot on the computers and the phones, but not often with music with sound on. So
Yeah, that's
people
kind of the sad
scroll down
thing. Yeah.
Facebook, but you know, very rarely will stop and actually listen to a 5 minute track. But occasionally they will watch a video. So I've actually found that very helpful this time. But for my music, really, that song didn't even get started for about a minute and a half, does it?
Oh, true.
So really, you know, I am after the people who can actually just sit down and appreciate a 5 minute song and just think, you know what, I'm just going to listen to this now. You know, have a cup of tea or a glass of pop or whatever it is you're going to have, and kind of dedicate yourself for 5 minutes just to go, wow, yeah, that's what I needed. So yes, it's never going to get in the charts, that's for sure. But the people that do take that 5 minutes out of their life to listen to, it seems to be affecting, and I'm getting some absolutely lovely feedback from it. And interesting enough, I'm getting a lot more kind of varied listeners this time. I think whereas not quite so folky, I think it's kind of opened it up to a slightly different audience, which is nice. It's always nice to have new ears on your music, isn't it?
Yeah, do you track where you're getting streamed? A lot of artists seem to be somewhat consumed with that, like, oh my gosh, I'm getting streamed in Argentina or somewhere like that. If you're looking at your statistics, or that's just like, I don't have time. I just got to sit here and create.
No, I'm not that fussed to be honest, but because of the way that I mean, it's kind of dirty word marketing really, but as an independent musician, I'm the only person who's going to tell anyone about my music.
Yeah.
I haven't got a label to do that or anything like that. So I do the marketing, and really the most authentic, natural way that I can market is just to connect with people and talk to them, find out what they like, um, introduce them to my music, and just get along with people as friends. So when I put an album out, especially with pre-orders, when the pre-orders start coming in, I know who these people are. I know who they are. I know how many cats they've got. I know where they live. It's all it's this is not a scalable marketing method, by the way, but it does. It is authentic and it does work. But this time round, I'm getting quite a lot of people pre-ordering, and I've got no idea who they are, which is brilliant. Yeah, so that's quite nice, really. That's good.
Yeah, yeah, it's so hard. There's so much content out there, and it's so difficult to try to get that notice and to even, like you're saying, getting 5 minutes, much
Absolutely.
less than it seems like it's as a teaser, and then people will order your albums that way by getting that personal connection, and that's a unique way of marketing, definitely.
For sure. I mean, there's one of my favorite acoustic musicians, singer-songwriter from Wales, called Martin Joseph. If you don't know him, check him out.
I'm
Fabulous.
familiar.
He he calls it rising above the noise. It doesn't even matter whether your music's good or bad. Just getting actually people to listen to it out of the millions of bits of music out there is really difficult. But what I am finding this time is that when people are listening, they seem to be falling in love with it. So for me, I've kind of reached something I've always wanted to do, which is get a piece of music that people are loving. So now for me, the hard bit is to get people to listen to it and realize they love it. There we
Yeah,
go.
that is so true. I mean, definitely getting that. It sounds very familiar too, but yeah. So, how many albums do you have out now?
Well, this is actually the 10th, believe it or not. That includes a couple of live albums. Uh, but yeah, they're all quite different in content. There's some quite folky ones. There's a kind of like a hard rock blues one, a couple of acoustic ones. It's quite a wide range. I like playing in all sorts of different types of music, and I don't I don't think right. What does this audience want to hear? It's whatever's in me and needs to come out comes out, and then occasionally it's of a similar style to the last album, but it's rare.
Yeah, yeah, so true. So, how long have you been into foster parenting?
Oh, we did our first lot probably 25 years ago. Oh, that's probably aging me slightly, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then when my wife Abby became pregnant, because he was prone to being a little bit rough, um, yeah, we had to stop that, which is fine. Then we started adopting. We adopted our eldest lad, who's at 3. He's 20 now, and then
Oh,
two lovely girls who we knew, and we knew they needed a home, so we kind of put our hands up for that one. That was one of the best things we've ever done. And then a couple of years back, as I said, we got into fostering properly, and it's been absolutely amazing. It's really, I cannot tell you how much hard work it is. It's ridiculous. And it's at some point it's absolutely soul destroying and really, really hard. But it's also full of joy and full of wonder as well. And it's great. It's great. We've really kind of found what we like doing, which is nice.
it's a great thing for the world. You're definitely contributing, not just through art, but just doing that. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world is parenting and guiding and being a mentor. So you're definitely making a difference in many lives. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think with the music, you can make quite a big difference as well. I mean, in my life, I've had times in my life which have been, really very, very tough. And one of the things that's brought me through them has been music. I mean, I remember one particular album, Gretchen Peters' Blackbirds album, which is absolutely fantastic. Again, highly recommended. And I just remember we'd actually had a death in the family, and I had to I was driving down across the country to tell my mum. So it was pretty tough, and it's one of those journeys that I kind of wanted to get over and done with, and I just never wanted to end because I knew there was a destination at the end of it, and it was. But I just bought this album and I put it on, and it just seemed to say everything that I didn't know how to say. It felt like Gretchen Peters had just somehow got into my heart and was singing what I needed to hear, and it was amazing. And I played that over and over for about 6 months, I think. And I think music can be very healing. Um, it can be inspirational. It's uplifting. It can cry with you. It can sing with you. It can laugh with you. It's magic. And I think whatever kind of, if you need it to amplify your emotions and mood, it can do that. And if you need it to start healing and moving towards a different type of emotion, it can do that too. And the thought of being able to do that for other people is fantastic. It's fantastic. And occasionally you just get a bit of feedback. Someone sends you a message and say, I really need to hear that bit of music today. It did this. And you just think, oh, it's all worth it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Generally, I try and make music that heals me and affects my emotions. I don't think too much about how it's going to do it on anybody else, but I figure if it moves me, it'll probably move somebody else listening to it.
Yeah, and it should. It should. I think that's how you get your best work. A track like Foundation, which is just another one that's just mesmerizing. How did that come to you after a while?
Again, it really was noodling. In that case, I was fiddling with different guitar tones. I find quite often if I just twiddle a few things, find a different sound, find a different drum beat, find a different speed, find a different instrument that to put some chords on or something. You just find something different, and then you play your guitar, and just something different happens, and you think, I didn't even know that was in there. Where's that come from? So I sometimes I struggle just to think, here's a tune. I kind of need something to bounce off. So, for instance, one of the tracks on the album is called Reed, and funnily enough, the John Reed I was talking to you about earlier, he
Yeah.
he sent me it's just a very simple bit of keyboard, kind of very atmospheric keyboard. It's incredibly simple. He sent it to me and said, "Oh, see if you could do something over the top of this." So I put it there, and then we've just got this epic track over the top of it, and to be honest, you can't even hear the keyboard for most of it because I've just gone all over it. There's all sorts of other stuff. You can hear it at the beginning, but without that acorn, the oak tree wouldn't have grown. And often I like it if so, if I've just got something different, just puts my mind in a different place, I think. But quite often your fingers just walk, and you don't really think too much about it, do you? Well, I don't anyway.
So where do you record?
I record in here at the moment. I'm in the front room of the house here.
Wow.
We've got quite a lot of rooms, as I said, because we've got 10 people living in the house at the moment,
Oh my
and
goodness.
all the children have to have their own separate bedrooms. So I mean that this is vast, sprawling Victorian money pit, as I said. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm in this room here between the corridor and the laundry, which is possibly one of the most heavily used rooms in the house. So it's basically a thoroughfare. I have people opening that door, wandering across there, opening the door, and then put the washing on or going to find a pair of socks all day long. It's so hard to concentrate. But yeah, I'm in here. But to be honest, I could do it in a cupboard if I needed to. It's wonderful because these days with the internet and having all your contacts, you can send people music, they can put it on, they can send it back. It's very, very freeing. You know what I mean? You could do it in a phone box in the Outer Hebrides if you needed to. Um, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's really true. You could
Very
record
lucky.
anywhere because of our technology now. Digital, it's smaller, you could take it with you. So are you the one who records and do all the mixing, or you're just hand that off to somebody else to deal
Oh,
with
yeah,
that?
I'm an independent musician. I can't afford people to do that. um, the My drums are done by Tel Bryant, who's a very accomplished, um, world-class drummer, who I'm very lucky to get the time from him to um, go on my albums as well. And he records all those and sends them across to me. But I mix those. I mix everything here, put it all together, and master it. Um, yeah, so I try and do most of it myself, really. Apart from the cost thing, which it doesn't make any financial sense to give it to anybody else, to be honest. And it's also a learning thing and about an ownership. It's all about ownership as well. The one thing I'm not doing this time, I'm doing vinyl, which I've never done before.
Ooh,
It's
yeah.
financially stupid because it's so very expensive. I probably won't ever make the money back on it, but it's a bucket list thing for me. I want to do a vinyl release, so I'm going to do it. And I thought this is the album for it. It's short enough to fit on one record, which is a good start because not all of my albums are. Um, and I think it'll be really nice. But the one thing I'm not doing is I'm not doing the vinyl mastering because I want to be able to get those records back and they'd be great. And if they're not great, I could say, right, go away and fix it. Whereas if I've attempted to do the vinyl mastering for the first time, they might say, well, it's because you haven't mastered it correctly. Or it doesn't mean I just need to hand that over to someone else and go, I need some vinyl, please.
Yeah.
But that's very, very exciting. I'm really, really looking forward to having some vinyl records. It's something I've always wanted to do. And yeah, finally getting around to it.
Yeah, there's nothing like it, like holding that vinyl and having the artwork with it and to really get that feel for it. Yeah, digital has kind of taken that away, especially when we
It's
went to MP3 and streaming and all of
God.
that.
I mean, I've got fantastic memories of records. My dad had a lot of records, and used to have them in like a case. So you'd click, lift the lid, and you get smell of records coming out of it. And you pick one up, and there'd be static electricity as you pull the record out the sleeve. This, hiss, crackle, then and it forced you to listen to an album. You weren't skipping tracks here, there, and everywhere. And now when I listen to the kids listen to their music on playlists on Spotify, it's rare to get through about 30 seconds of a song before moving on to something else. And it might be entertainment, but it's not art. It's not music when that happens, really, is it? So yeah, I think it's a bit sad that they haven't grown up with records and cassettes and things like that. But there we go.
Yeah. Did you grow up in the countryside in the UK? Where exactly were you at
Oh
all the
gosh,
time?
all over the
No.
place. My parents were actually missionaries with the Salvation Army. So at the age of 2, I went to Rhodesia, which
Oh,
changed into Zimbabwe. And we came back when I was 6. I think that was about their third tour of duty. Um, and so I've got some memories of that, good memories of that. Not a huge amount because I was obviously quite small. But when we came back, my dad was in district audit and we moved around every few years, really. So I've lived uh, in some cities down south, up north. But we did one of the lovely houses we had was on a small holding. We had 13 acres and some cows and horses. So we had stables, and that was a big learning thing for sure because we hadn't got a clue what we were doing with this basically a mini farm. So we had to learn how to do fencing very quickly. I remember I've chased. We used to get a call saying the cows are on the way to the motorway, and you'd
that
have to go and try
happens,
and round
yeah.
them up. Um,
Could
oh,
get
that was
dangerous.
great. So we're in the countryside here. We're in a little village called Narborough, and it's just big enough to have a vaguely useful shop and a post office. Um, and it's small. It's nice. It's big enough to have a little bit of a community, but small enough that just a few meters outside the house is just countryside, and it's fantastic. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds, and it's not far from town centre if you want to go into the city. So yeah, we do a lot
How
of walking. Our kids um, at the moment they do a lot better outside. When they're inside, they get a little bit cooped up and a bit stir crazy. So I'm forever taking them on long, 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 long walks. Yeah,
it's good for them,
that's
definitely.
it. That's it.
And
Good
good
for
for
sure.
your art. I'm sure you can get a lot of inspiration just getting out and looking at the vistas. And somehow, there's just so much noise with electronics. It's just nice to be able to get out there and get into nature.
It is, and with the kids, it's absolutely wonderful to see them. I don't know, stroking the horses or looking at the flowers, or bird, trying to work out what birds they are, and it's you just think that's what being kids about. You know, the screens are great, telly's great, um, iPods are great, and tablets, and they've all got their times. But when they're at their most natural and their happiest is when they're outside. It's great.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of screens, your website is pretty good and interactive. You got some interesting things on there. How you
Oh,
could
thank you.
recreate a photo shoot with glamping and all of that. It's called glamorous camping if
That's
you
it.
recreate that. Yeah, it's neat. That's really neat. And then something called yomping. I've never heard of that.
Oh, yomping. That's just walking up and down the hills. That, yeah,
Okay.
bit of a silly expression, but yeah, that's what
Yeah.
yomping is.
It's always nice to learn new things like that. And you're into the organization called Open Hands. You got a certain percentage that goes to that
Certainly
on
am. Can you
sale.
just bear me 1 second?
Oh,
I
sure.
really apologize. One
Sure.
second.
Absolutely. Always a little break here as we do this sometimes. I rather just chat here than rather have to do some editing, which I do quite a bit of. But once again, we are with Matt Steady over here in the UK. I always like
Oh,
to try to
geez. The
tell the
postman was
audience.
not going to go away.
I was last interview I did, some deer got in the backyard of my
Oh, my
guest. The
goodness.
dog was going crazy because
No way.
the dog thought, oh yeah, there's some other dogs with some spots on them, not like a Dalmatian, but they
Yeah, yeah.
how the fawns are.
Well, we've got chickens and ducks in our back garden, and we regularly have pheasants and hedgehogs, foxes.
Wow.
So you've got to keep the foxes away from the chickens, of course. But yeah, it's quite countryside from that. I've completely lost my train of thread. What were you asking me?
We're just talking about yomping and then how 10% of your profits go to
Oh,
open
Open
hands.
Hands. Yeah, Open Hands is brilliant. They are a charity here in Leicester. It started off basically providing food parcels for the homeless and doing like a soup kitchen. So basically feeding them um, nice meals every week or so. But it's grown so much more now, and they do hygiene parcels for people when people move into council flats when they and they've literally got nothing. They'll go and set them up with a whole bunch of furniture. So basically anyone who's in need in Leicester for whatever they need, basically can go there and get some kind of help, whether or not it's with filling in official forms when English isn't their first language, or if it's childcare, or if it's learning English, or there's so many things they do now, and it's absolutely brilliant. And the thing I love about it is because I know the people there. I know that every penny that you give to them goes directly into helping someone. It doesn't go into a load of marketing and um, TV adverts or anything like that. It just goes straight into helping people. It's the most practical um, thing I've ever found to actually give you money to, and it actually makes a difference. So yeah, I heartily support Open Hands. They're brilliant.
Yeah, that's really a huge problem worldwide. We have a huge homeless issue here in the U.S. So yeah, if especially on the West Coast, because word gets out that the weather's really good, so you can flock over there and set up tents, especially Los Angeles and going up to San Francisco. Well, we got issues here in the Atlanta, Georgia area as well. It's we have a lot of different organizations here too, so that always piques my interest when somebody's trying to make a difference for the homeless. It's a really wonderful thing. So yeah,
I mean, over
absolutely.
here, I mean, we got there's the homeless certainly need help, but there's a lot of people who aren't homeless that are still in absolute dire straits over here. It's really tough times for a lot of people, and there's a lot of professional people that end up coming to the food nights because their mortgage is so high, the utility bills are so high, they're getting paid, but it's all going into that, and they've got nothing left for food. And it's there's people struggling all up and down the kind of range of people and incomes, and so, yeah, it's just tough times for a lot of people at the moment.
Yeah, it really is. It's sad. And hearing about professional people, it's just that's really scary. That you hear you were working so hard and then you're dealing with all the pressures of modern society and then inflation is really tough everywhere.
Yeah, for sure.
It really is. Wow. So your new uh project is out there. It's Presence and
That's right. So it's in pre-orders at the moment. There's two of the tracks released, probably the third coming up shortly. All the others are recorded. I'm literally at that last point where I'm just thinking, does it need a slightly bigger gap between the next song? And just checking the volume levels of the tracks to make sure they're vaguely comparable. At lunchtime, I went for a walk, just putting it on headphones, and I kind of picked up a kind of couple of tiny things, but really, in all honesty, it's there now. So it will be out fairly shortly. So yeah, it won't be out. I've still got to order the CDs and the vinyl and wait for them to turn up and all that. So it won't be out to general use for a little while. But if you get your pre-orders in, basically as soon as it's done, you get sent the digital version, and as soon as the CDs and everything actually arrive on my house, then I package them up and send them off. So if you want to be first in the queue, get your
yeah.
pre-order in.
Yeah. You're doing it all. It's just really, I just admirable to see somebody be able to just from start to finish. It's just, and you can do that these days, but it's work and time, definitely.
Certainly is. You have to be an accountant and a marketer. You have to
Oh,
be a postman. You have to be an artist, graphic designers. It's the amount of skills you've got to do. You can get people to do all of these things, but if you're trying to actually make half a living on it, you can't afford to do it. You have to learn all these things. You have to be self-sufficient, and you have to do it, and you have to do it yourself. And you learn an awful lot. It is very cool.
yeah, yeah,
But it also
definitely.
means you don't do as much time on the music as you possibly could.
Yeah, that's the thing, and big time artists, I'm sure they're like, no, this is all I do. They can probably be kind of divas after a while too. Once you get that success, we know who they are. Plenty of them out there. But yeah, it's just really great. And it's organic. You're able to do it all. So you got a great catalog. Where can we find everything that you can do and make all these pre-orders? You're on the net at what website?
Mattsteady.com. So MATTSTEADY. So slow and steady. And
Yeah.
Matt with two T's. Mattsteady.com. And
Yeah.
I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all that. Feel free to send me a message. I speak to anybody who speaks to me, like having a
Yeah.
good chat. So yeah,
All the way from Leicester in the UK. That's really amazing. How far are you to London?
about an hour and a half
Not too bad.
on a good day. Much more on a bad day.
Do you have to drive there or are there trains that can take you there?
You can go by train. If you're just going to go for a concert at the O2 or something, you just drive down and get in the car park. But if you want to go into the city of London, you'd probably get a train.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I don't want to worry about a car half the time. I'm sure petrol is probably a little pricey there as well.
It's not as bad as it was. It did get
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I'm sure. Yeah, I've seen those prices. I was in London ages ago and I was like, yeah, I just took the trains everywhere. It's just far easier for me.
Yeah, you got the tube as well. We don't actually go to London that much. Once, twice a year, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to be out there in Leicester. I'm sure it's a way of life is probably a lot more calm, I'm sure.
In places. It's not calm in our house. It's crazy.
Got your own chaos, that's for sure. Well, it's just great what you're doing, and thanks for joining me. I really had a great time.
Oh, I enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me.
Take care. Have a
All
good
right,
one.
cheers, Bob.
And thanks for joining me. What a great talk. What a great guy. Foster parent and does so much for their rural community out there. Really, really fun. It's great to hear from people overseas across the pond. Anyway, we'll be back here soon. I have some episodes here for the end of summer, going into fall. So stay tuned. Take care.